Welcome back, my friends, to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense. Today's episode could be a little unusual because we're going to get a rare look into a prosecutor's file. You don't usually get to see the prosecutor's file, but in this case, a member of the parliament who has responsibility for the Committee on Accountability got the opportunity to review it a few months ago, reported it in an interview, and then was kind enough to be interviewed by me. So you'll see all of that, and you'll see precisely what is in the file of the Ukrainian prosecutor's office with regard to Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Mykola Zlochevsky, the head of Burisma, and also what's in the file with regard to collusion, meaning Ukrainian illegal interference with Americans and with Democrats in the 2016 election. Mr. Derkach was a member of the Rada. The Rada is the parliament of Ukraine, and he was chairman of the Committee on Accountability. And in that capacity, he was given the opportunity to review the documents. So our two source documents here will be that interview that he did, which laid it out within a few days of seeing it, and then my interview of him on December 7, 2019, which you'll see excerpts of in a few minutes. Again, Mr. Derkach's background: he was a member of the Rada and chairman of the Committee on Accountability. He has a long history in government, going back to, I believe, 1994, when he was the first assistant in the Comptroller's office. 1998, he was the chief of staff to the Prime Minister. He was a supporter of the Orange Revolution, which I believe was in 2004. His radio station broadcast 24 hours a day from the Maidan during that revolution, and therefore, along with several other radio stations, courageously withstood the violence that was going on there to help propel the revolution. And he's been a member of Parliament, the Rada, since 1998. And he's a lawyer, and his specialty has always been accountability of government, meaning auditing and that sort of thing. And for 17 years, he's been the owner of the station that I mentioned, which is called Radio Rada. So his involvement in this really started after the election of 2016. It goes to 2017. When he started to get information, both in his capacity as a member of the Rada and as a press person, about a lot of documents and information that there was a good deal of collusion, like they were describing in Russia, but happening in the Ukraine. Whether it happened in Russia or not was beyond his purview. Turns out it didn't. But he heard that there were documents showing that Alexandra Chalupa, you remember her, Alexandra Chalupa is the one who met with Teleshenko, asked him for all the dirt he could get on President Trump, Donald Trump Jr. and Manafort, and then was orchestrated the phony Black Ledger with the threat that it would destroy Trump's candidacy. He started to hear about her, and he started to see documents about her, that she was, as a DNC operative, collecting dirt on Trump and on Manafort, and that she was compromising Ukrainian officials, a number of them. The name that he focused on was Lyshenko, and Lyshenko, of course, you might remember, is the one who held the press conference to reveal the black books. And in the press conference, he said the purpose of it was to destroy Donald Trump's campaign. That was in August of 2016. So he then saw other documents showing collaboration between the Democratic National Committee, the Ukrainian officials, the United States Embassy, and he saw the chain going all the way up to President Poroshenko and including the U.S. Embassy. He also observed that there were anti-corruption investigations headed by Artem Sitnik. But Artem Sitnik was a person who had become a partisan in the campaign. He had announced that he would do anything to elect Hillary Clinton. I believe there's a recording of that, although I have not heard that recording. I've been told about it. It was done by the head of the Special Prosecutor's Office, Nasir Kolonitsky. But what we do know is during his press conference in which he illegally revealed that Manafort was a subject of an investigation in August of 2016, he went out of his way to tell people that he also hoped that this would hurt, if not destroy, Trump's candidacy. And, of course, that was re-echoed by his partner in crime, Lyshenko, who said exactly the same thing. So these are the things that brought him to be interested in this. And then on October 10, 2019, he held a press conference. During the press conference, he pointed out that he had been given the opportunity to look at several different documents. He had gotten to see the prosecutorial file, and he had been given by certain journalists results of their journalistic investigations, which, as he points out here, they were afraid to reveal, because in this interview he'll explain to you that journalists in Ukraine have been known to be killed and are, in fact, very frightened of saying something against the government. And this would have been very clearly against the government of President Poroshenko, who was in power at that time and well known to be the biggest crook in the Ukraine. So let's quickly go through what he has in this document. It's long. The interview is long, but I think we can almost dispose of it with the first page. In the first page, he says that there are 6 criminal proceedings related to Burisma Company in which Joe Biden, the ex-president, meaning vice president of USA, along with his son Hunter, are the defendants. Well, that disputes the lie that the case was debunked, that there was no investigation of them, that the case was dormant. Those lies you've read over and over again in the New York Times, the Washington Post, NBC, CNBC, MSNBC, CNN, thousands of times, just one lie after another. Again, the file shows 6 criminal proceedings related to Burisma Company in which Joe Biden, along with his son Hunter, are the defendants. Yes, there was a case against them, a pending investigation when Shokin was dismissed. That is a flat-out lie. He goes on to say that the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, which we call NABU, was under the complete and total control of certain representatives of the diplomatic mission of the United States. What you'll find out is that NABU was established by a gentleman named George Kent with the connivance of George Soros. It was intended to be an anti-corruption bureau, and as we found out in prior episodes, it became just the opposite, a haven for corruption, where Soros's cases got dismissed, Soros's enemies got prosecuted, and evidence and dirt on Donald Trump were collected. NABU was a thoroughly corrupt law enforcement agency, and it was under the control of the United States Embassy, as you will see over and over again during the interview. And then he goes on to say in this first page, which again disposes probably of all the situations in the case, quote, "We have material evidence of the pressure applied on Mr. Victor Shokin, the former Prosecutor General, in the course of the investigation of the business activities of the Burisma Company." So he goes on to say that these documents are part of the investigational proceeding. He points out how NABU had leaked documents to the U.S. Embassy so that it could be used to hurt Donald Trump. And he gives us what the file describes as and I call the first bribe, because everybody thinks of one bribe, and that's the bribe when Biden says to Poroshenko, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you don't get your $1 billion loan guarantee. Well, there was a bribe that preceded that, and it was this one. At the same time, Zlochevsky, according to the Ukrainian investigators and journalists' opinion, contacted Joe Biden, the U.S. vice president, using the services of the lobbying company. He proposed to them, according to the Ukrainian investigators, to share the revenues earned by a Ukrainian gas extracting company, Burisma Group. Hunter, Joe Biden, was officially appointed to the post of board member on May 12, 2014. The New York Times then wrote that his official salary was only $50,000 per month. However, it was only a small part of Hunter Biden's remuneration. That could have been as high, he says, as $16.5 million, including remuneration either to the lobbying firm or to the lobbying firm for Joe Biden, as he will go on to say. He goes on to say that in the file, it makes it clear that Hunter was one of the four owners of the amount of over $16.5 million, that amount was laundered, and that Victor Shokin was investigating that when he was fired. That's the document we've shown you many times, the Latvian document, in which I think it's $14.8 million, comes out of Ukraine, goes to Latvia, goes from Latvia to Cyprus, all pretending to be loan to different companies. Then all of a sudden, it disappears. And then documents in a trial of Devon Archer show that it went into Biden's file. Flat out, 100% cold money laundering case. It's been sitting there for years. And how they're want to put Roger Stone in prison for 9 years, and they don't want to investigate a money laundering case that's proven by documents to the tune of $14 million by the son of a vice president who's in a conflicted position that might just lead to more corruption. Gives you a sense of the double standard that we have in this country, which is disgusting. He then goes on to say that Mr. Shokin was fired, and he was fired at the request of, or the demand of Joe Biden. Well, we all know that. The question was, Biden admitted having him fired. The only question was his son under investigation at the time? This and about 8 other pieces of evidence conclusively proved that he was under investigation at the time. And I think we've also conclusively proved that Joe knew it. But Joe, he says on page 5 of this, Joe Biden was concerned not only about the revenues gained by his son, but for the gains obtained by the affiliated with him lobbying company. The slide that he put up at this point describes the scheme of obtaining the amount of $900,000 US by the Biden senior via the lobbying company, according to the Ukrainian investigators. Please pay your particular attention because this document is being exposed for the first time. This is not the blockbuster I was talking about. I would call this a semi-blockbuster. And it's a little ambiguous. Either way, it's illegal. It's the transfer of money from Burisma Group, I'm reading it now, for the purpose of lobbying activities, according to personally to Joe Biden via the lobbying firm. The amount of over $900 US was transferred to the account of the U.S. company named Rosemont Seneca Partners, which was associated with Biden. The question is, number one, what was the lobbying all about? Number two, was this an indirect payment to Biden? Number three, and this is purely comes from another source, Mr. Kulyuk, who's investigating this, there appear to be similar kinds of payments like this. He hesitated to give me the amount, but he said it was very, very substantial. And they've gotten no cooperation from the United States in being able to see where that money went. And some of it went to offshore accounts. So there is part of the deep state, protecting Joe Biden. I'd call that obstruction of justice, wouldn't you? And then he says that there were many, many loan agreements written in. As this money was being transferred, it was being disguised as loans. Now, I've investigated money laundering a lot. If this isn't money laundering, I'm not Rudy Giuliani. Goes to 1, 2, 3 countries before it comes into Biden's. It twice gets described as a loan agreement, and it goes through 2 companies, at least, that have no involvement in it. And as a former United States attorney and associate attorney general, I am shocked this has been out there this long and there's been no investigation of it at all. And every single stupid, silly, irrelevant allegation against someone connected with Donald Trump is taken up immediately. In fact, they go so far as they did with General Flynn to create a crime. And they pretty much created the Roger Stone process crimes. Nobody created this crime. He did it. Nobody faked him out with a memo that they had hidden in a desk that would have described the truth and then got him to say something that was inaccurate. He did it himself for greed and as part of a bribe to his father. And you got to be a mental midget not to figure that out. So with that, we'll take a short break. For those of you who know me, in addition to law and politics, I'm passionate about the Yankees, baseball, football, all sports to watch, golf to play, history to read, opera, classical music to listen to and watch, and cigars to relax and socialize. And I have definite opinions on the best cigars for the right time and the right place. And you'll hear about that too. But the revolution in cigars took place in the 1990s. Most cigars then were machine-made with foreign ingredients. Now it's just the opposite. Most are hecho a mano, man-made. All organic, natural, and premium. The revolution was led by one man and one man alone, Marvin Shankin, and Cigar Aficionado magazine. Marvin had been rating wines quite successfully for Wine Spectator magazine, and he brought the rating system to cigars. The first cigars rated in the 90s were gone in a flash. Even now, the first thing I do when I get my magazine is I go right to the ratings page. Here it is. 93, 91. Oh yeah, I'll go for that one. Then there'll be 94. Whoa, 92. Problem is you got to get there fast, because they go fast. This revolutionized the cigar industry, and quality rose to the top. Then there's the Cigar of the Year. Try to get them as fast as possible because they're gone pretty quick. This magazine revolutionized the industry. And I'll tell you what, this month is Cigar of the Year. Cigar of the Year. What are these for? Cigar of the Year. You better get this magazine quick, because these cigars are going to be gone very, very quickly. Go to the link on our website and order it. And you'll be able to get down to your cigar store and get to smoke a few of these, and you let me know which ones you like better, because we can have a really good conversation about it. Sometimes I do agree with Marvin, and when I don't, I let my opinion be known, and Marvin usually says, stick to the law. Also, along with rated cigars, there are articles on politics, sports, interesting profiles, and Marvin also has Wine Spectator, Spirit Advocate. If you like wine, if you like scotch, if you like bourbon, if you like rye, if you like vodka, if you like gin, they're the magazines for you. And you know what? Subscribe to Cigar Aficionado right now through the link on our website. I know you catch me a lot reading this magazine, but this time, this is a back issue a couple years ago. And look, smoking and drinking like Churchill. Well, this guy's one of my heroes. I mean, he saved the Western world. Figured out Nazism before anyone else, and they considered him a warmonger, a maniac. If it wasn't for him, who knows what would have happened. Helped to bring Roosevelt around and America. So, here's Gary Oldham playing his part in the great movie. So when you get Cigar Aficionado magazine, you don't just get cigars, and you get sports, you get history, you get a lot of stuff that you're going to like. Let's finish off with the interview, because I think we've covered most of it. He points out once again that there are 6 criminal cases, and he points something else out which you lawyers may want to follow up on. And I believe we'll put this opinion on my website for lawyers to read. You know, it's been said that what Biden and his son did in Ukraine didn't violate the laws of Ukraine. Well, that was said by Lutsenko, probably under pressure from Poroshenko, because the president who he worked for, because Poroshenko was very afraid that this case would reveal millions of dollars in bribes to him. And in any event, Lutsenko's not a lawyer. So the parliament went out and got an opinion of lawyers, and lawyers have rendered an opinion in writing that they were interfering into the activities of law enforcement officers by influencing the action of law enforcement officers. That's Article 343 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. It's a criminal offense. And also interference in the presidential elections is a criminal offense. And there's no doubt that they were investigating, and they are investigating, violations of Ukrainian laws allegedly committed by our former vice president. And then he makes a final observation, which I guess I've learned with the attempt to kill our important witness, Mr. Shokin, which is, you know, when you work as a journalist in Ukraine, you cannot feel safe 100%, especially during recent years. No clear investigation has been conducted in this respect. And he points out, because he is in that profession, how guarded the journalists are to bring information forward, which sometimes inhibits an investigation, although he was able to obtain a good deal of that information. So that takes us through a review of the file. And now we'll get to the interview that I did of him. And the interview was conducted in Kiev with Mr. Derkash, and it largely reviewed what we've been through. But what it did do was it expanded on a couple of topics which he could lay out, you know, in more detail for us. And on December 7, 2019, I conducted an interview with him, and it involved really the money laundering, the Biden bribes, the collusion. And I began by asking him, when he reviewed the files, the prosecutor's files, what did it show? What did it show with regard to Biden? What was in the files? And this is what Mr. Derkash had to say in his own words. It shows the vice president and his son under investigation, and that there was no dormant investigation, and charges weren't debunked. If I see that word debunk one more time, I don't know. You know, if I see it one more time, it's just going to make me conclude further just how corrupt our media has become. They know it's a lie. This proves it's a lie. 15 other things prove it's a lie, and they still write it to protect their boy. So, more on that from Mr. Derkash. Show that the vice president and his son were being investigated for the activities of the Burisma company, and that there was material evidence of pressure applied to Mr. Shokin to stop the investigation. And this is basically, I'm just looking at your affidavit, and rather than go over the whole thing, this is essentially, this interview, you make it very, very clear that there were criminal investigations of both Hunter Biden and Joseph Biden.
You show up this in the papers and the facts and the documents, what we already provided to you.
As you know, he also saw evidence of money laundering, which was about as clear as a bell. We have evidence of one transaction. According to what he saw in the file, there appear to be numerous money laundering transactions, both for Burisma in general and regarding the payments to Hunter Biden, Devin Archer, Rosemont Seneca, and also for the lobbying firm and for the lobbying of Joe Biden. So let's listen to that. criminal investigations of both Hunter Biden and Joseph Biden.
Мы показали это в документах.
We show up this in the papers and the facts and the documents, what we already provided to you.
Они есть в доступе на сайте Nabulix.
Yeah, you can find out this information on the website Nabulix.
And you also saw documentation that a substantial amount of money was laundered during this process.
Много денег.
Yeah,
And approximately how much money the Bidens could have gotten more than 16 million.
Общий вывод, что эта сумма была на самом деле больше, чем 16
Но
миллионов.
если за 1,5 года мы видим перечисление порядка такого, то да, наверное.
Yes, it is, because you can find during the 1.5 years the transaction more than this amount. What you.
And then there's the $900,000 payment, the one that's been pulled out, and the one that can be identified as a payment for lobbying Joe Biden. He identifies it, and that is part of what we describe as the first bribe that he described in his interview, which is Mykola Zlochevsky originally approached Joe Biden to protect his company. In 2014, he feared that his company was going to be taken by Poroshenko and the Ukrainian government, and he felt that there was no one better to protect him than the vice president, because the vice president was handing out the money there. So he bribed him with a stake, according to what's in the file, in Burisma, and money for a no-show job for his son. That was the bribe to Biden, which would be the first bribe. And that's bribery of a vice president of the United States, sitting vice president of the United States. And if we just listen to it, we'll get another view of it, even though we've had 3 or 4 witnesses that have testified to it. And then there's one particular transaction that you made note of in one of your slides, and that's the $900,000 payment for lobbying Joe Biden that was paid to Rosemont Seneca. It was, the way you described it was that he was not only concerned about the revenues gained by his son, but for the gains obtained by the affiliated with him lobbying company.
Это мнение украинских расследователей и прокуроров.
This opinion of Ukrainian, based on Ukrainian investigators.
Это прямо цитата из одного из дел.
It's exact words to words what you can find out in one criminal cases.
Мое мнение, я думаю,
His personal
что
opinion.
так много было этих Сенек и перечислений.
And I concerned there are many transactions between different Seneca.
Но сами расследователи
All investigators a little bit confused what's going
And
on.
are they all? You say at the bottom of this page 5, which is a very good question. What kind of consultancy services for Burisma was paid through the offshore companies for one Biden, same as for the other? Are you saying that these payments were laundered payments?
Часть денег, которая заходила на Бурисма,
Part of this money who drops to Burisma account, it was formerly loan agreement, based on loan agreement.
То, что касалось вопросов дальше выплаты, они шли в виде
The next
оплаты.
transaction will be the consulting payment
Это тоже есть материалы.
from Burisma to Seneca. You can find out this information in the case.
And then we went on in the interview to interference in the 2016 election. And there's no question that there was interference in the election. Problem is, it's never been really investigated. For example, the case that Yovanovitch had dismissed corruptly, the one on Antac, would have afforded a good deal of evidence on corruption. And the case against Lyshenko, who was the guy who held the press conference using the phony black ledger to try to destroy Trump's candidacy. Those cases were dismissed and never used as an opportunity to gather the documents or try to turn witnesses. So I asked him about interference in the 2016 election. There was a substantial amount of illegal interference going on in the Ukraine in the 2016 election in order to help Hillary Clinton.
Достаточное количество есть обоснованных подозрений на эту тему.
There are many official suspicions. We have to prove it, these facts.
And
И мы просили провести нормальное расследование.
That's why we required to investigate these facts.
Никто уже не проводит.
But nobody take care about it.
Now I pause here because this is really important to note. Every criminal scheme of this magnitude, and this is a bribe scheme that could go up to $200 to $300 million when you're finished. It has a leader, top. Remember when I did the mafia cases, we always had the boss at the top and then everybody down here. So who was running this one on the Ukrainian side? Well, it's pretty clear Mr. Derkash who's running it. The most crooked man in Ukraine, Joe Biden's good friend. Ambassador Yovanovitch is a good friend who she supported. You know, these people claim they were concerned about corruption. Shokin, Poroshenko, was basically stealing the whole country. And everybody knew it, and they didn't care. If you look at the way Shokin was, I don't know what he could have been stealing, but he sure as hell wasn't stealing the country. What a bunch of phonies. Well, let's listen to what he has to say about the biggest thief in Ukraine. I can't say in Ukrainian history, but he'd be up there. President Poroshenko was at the heart of it. That he directly participated in it.
Я уверен
He is sure
в том, что
that Poroshenko
его согласия,
organize,
без
participate,
его участия этого не могло произойти.
and control it, this situation.
And the American embassy assisted in.
Это было практически, об этом не скрывая, говорил Лещенко.
Nobody will try to hide this. They coordinated every step.
Общается. Но это надо подтвердить.
Notice that the embassy assisted in this scheme. When you wonder about Ambassador Yovanovitch, George Kent, who I think was there at the time. A lot of problems inside the State Department. A lot of problems. Now we're going to look at with him and question him about NABU, which is it really is the organization of special investigators who assist the special prosecutors. So Soros and George Kent had this scheme that sounded wonderful. They did it in a couple of Eastern European countries they were able to corrupt. They set up this anti-corruption thing. It sounds great, anti-corruption. They set up in Ukraine NABU and SAP. NABU were the investigators of corruption. SAP were the special prosecutors of corruption. And wow, great plaudits in the left, alt-left, communist, and far communist groups in Europe that they were all associated with. They love this. Well, as you will hear from Mr. Derkash, as you heard from Mr. Teleshenko, NABU became what it was investigating. NABU became almost immediately corrupt because NABU was used to dismiss cases against Soros's companies, Soros's organizations, Soros's friends. It was used to go after cases against Soros's enemies, and it was largely used to do nothing. Largely used to do nothing, except whatever the American embassy told it to do. So let's see what Mr. Derkash has to say to this corroborating Mr. Teleshenko that you heard the other day. To fight corruption by the United States, by George Kent and George Soros.
И на это было потрачено громадное количество денег.
And by the way, they spent $1 billion American people.
And they spent $1 billion on this NABU?
No, имеется в виду много.
It means
on all of the corruption.
All of the corruption money.
So NABU became the center of the problem and illegal activity instead of fighting corruption.
Это подтверждено в документах.
That's true, and we can prove it.
And over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, during the Obama administration, where they say they were fighting corruption, what you're telling me is that the corruption got worse rather than better.
Коррупция стала хуже, чем была.
Да, и
Yes,
на пресс-конференции, на которой сидели все.
Remember, Joe was appointed to do 2 things in Ukraine. Point man, whatever, point man. He was the point man. And as the point man, he was going to give out the billions of dollars that was necessary for Ukraine to survive, which gave him a stranglehold on the country. And it's the reason why Zlochevsky came to him, because he was more powerful than Poroshenko and bribed him. But he was also supposed to reduce the corruption in Ukraine. Well, because that's a complete joke when you consider that the job that he arranged for his son, however you look at it, stunk. It was corrupt. Stunk. And everybody in Ukraine knew it, and every time Biden spoke about corruption, they would say, start with yourself, Joe. Get the heck out of here and stop pulling money out of our country. Because they all knew it. We didn't know it because we have a corrupt media that doesn't report it because he's a Democrat. Just like they didn't report all of the thievery of the Clinton Foundation. But just on a broad scale, because there were so many claims at those hearings by Yovanovitch and Kent and how they were fixing corruption in the Ukraine and how the president exaggerated the situation in the Ukraine. I just straight out asked him, has things gotten better in the 5 years, when Joe was point man? Any material improvement in corruption? So listen to what he has to say. I think you know the answer. During the Obama administration, where they say they were fighting corruption, what you're telling me is that the corruption got worse rather than better.
Коррупция стала хуже, чем была.
Да, и
Yes,
на
it is.
пресс-конференции, на которой сидели все журналисты,
And my last press conference,
первое
when we been in all the famous United States media,
я задал
media.
специальный вопрос в зал. Кто здесь в зале считает, что коррупция...
He asked the rhetoric question, who knows and who count the corruption decrease in Ukraine?
Кто-то может из журналистов...
Anybody can prove it, or anybody can say no?
В зале тишина была.
Completely silence.
And Ambassador Yovanovitch testified that she had an offensive against corruption. Because she didn't do anything about Burisma and Biden. She had an offensive against corruption, which avoided the two most corrupt situations in Ukraine. Poroshenko, who was stealing billions, and Biden, his son, Zlochevsky, who was stealing multiple millions. She didn't do anything about that. Otherwise, she was working on corruption. So I asked Mr. Durkosh, who's the chairman of the Committee on Accountability, what was the result of Ambassador Yovanovitch's offensive against corruption? Listen to his answer. Pretty definitive.
Я задал вопрос, тогда какие результаты?
Where is result? He asked the question, where is result? The fighting Ambassador Ivanovich and his embassy with the Ukrainian corruptions. Zero.
Well, I appreciate very, very much your honesty and your forthrightness. When I used to try a case and a witness gave me an answer like that, I would say, repeat it, please.
Я задал вопрос, тогда какие результаты?
Where is result? He asked the question, where is result? The fighting Ambassador Ivanovich and his embassy with the Ukrainian corruptions. Zero.
Well, I appreciate very, very much your honesty and your forthrightness. What a complete farce. What a complete fraud. Those people like Schiff and Pelosi, whose son made a lot of money in Ukraine, and nobody's looked at that yet. What a complete farce they made out of this, huh? Poroshenko, in fact, stole more money than Yanukovych. Let's see what he has to say about that. But what you're telling me is the second one stole even more than the first one. So things went from bad to worse.
That's why he asked you.
So things went from bad to worse.
Invite Zelensky to the White House.
Are you? And once again, Ambassador Yanukovych, who several times testified prominently about her efforts against corruption, let's see what Mr. Durkosh has to say about that. And once again, listen to the final answer. You know that both Ambassador Yanukovych and George Kent testified very prominently. Did you find their testimony about their efforts against corruption to be credible?
Мы мы же видим, что коррупция только увеличивается.
Yes, we see. We just increase corruption, unfortunately. What they did, it increased corruption in Ukraine.
For American citizens, it would be fair for us to come away with the clear conclusion that over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the American embassy has not been helpful in fighting corruption. If anything, it's increased corruption. And that NABU, the organization it established, turned into a corrupt organization itself.
Да.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. I told you I was going to bring you a blockbuster. Well, I think this is enough, really. It kind of proves the case for about the 5th time. The case that doesn't exist. The one that I made up. The ones that the Russians gave me. The Russians told Biden to take the bribe from Zlochevsky, and the Russians told him to threaten Poroshenko, and the Russians told Hunter Biden to take 16 million or so in laundered money, and the Russians said to take all that money in lobbying services, and what a crock of you know what. But I told you I'd come up with a blockbuster, and I really do have one, and I'm going to show it to you. I'm just going to show it to you. This is a document from the Accounting Chamber decision, 19 December 2017. It kind of outlines the last couple of years of the Obama administration. And I'll just read to you from the very beginning, and then next time we will go into detail and we will see something that will shock us. This document, done by Ukrainian independent accountants, says that there is, as of December 2017 and going back for about a 4-year period, I believe, there's between 5.2 and 5.3 billion dollars in foreign aid that was given to Ukraine, which is not accountable, which is not properly entered, which appears to have had no result on the thing it was attempting to do, and also appears to have gotten lost, a good deal of it, in NGOs, non-government organizations, that you will find were all of one political ideology. They were described as Soros or left of Soros. And the decisions were made by the embassy, and you will find out that when there was an attempt to investigate this by the Ukrainians, it was our embassy that stopped them from doing it, because it was our embassy that was going to be caught for mishandling a great deal of this money by giving it to their favored political NGOs, and it gets worse. So, please, digest what we've talked about today. It's enough. But then come back with us for the next episode. We're going to show you why President Trump is so concerned about how American money is spent. $5.3 billion in foreign aid, unaccounted for in a short period of time. And our embassy and the Obama administration tries to hide it because it went to their friends. Nobody investigated that either. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to get the facts to the American people so we can end the double standard and we can start investigating Obama, his corrupt administration. The only reason you don't know about the corruption of the administration, Obama administration, because the press covers it up. Because he's sanctified. Well, he's not sanctified. Biden sure as heck isn't. And Hillary. Ooh. So we're going to bring that all out. So come back. We'll go through the $5.3 billion in foreign aid that's unaccounted for. $5.3 billion. Thank you.